12s. In this video we are looking at creative thinking and problem solving. So in the video in particular, we are going to be looking at the difference between decision making and problem solving. What is the difference between those two things? And then we are going to look at the problem solving steps, and then we are going to move on to the problem solving techniques, and then we are also going to cover an exam question and see how this topic is tested in the examination. So let's start by how to study this topic. For you to be able to study this topic, I have provided a link to the notes to the topic of creative thinking and problem solving in the description box below. Once you click on that link, it's going to directly download the notes into your device. So when you open them, you will find some certain headings in them. So when it comes to what to study and how to study it, I'm going to be using this video to show you and direct you on what to study and what to summarize for yourself. My recommendation is you are getting your business notes book where you're taking your notes for business studies, and you are opening a fresh new page with a fresh new topic of creative thinking and problem solving, and we are going to go ahead and get started with our first heading. Your first heading is the difference between decision making and problem solving. So basically here we are outlining the difference between decision making and problem solving. You see that in the notes it's been done for you in a table format. My recommendation for you is that you can recopy this table and do it in a table format as well, but for you the only job that you have here is to summarize, paraphrase and rephrase these sentences and write them in your own words and in the only English that you are comfortable with, that you know that when you have written it in that manner you will be able to remember it in the test to come. So because remember, it feels like it's early now, but imagine if you had to now write about this topic in your final examination in November. We can't be studying to forget. You need to study for long-term retention. So for that long-term retention, it's those notes that are written in your own words, in your own English. You are going to be able to remember them for a long time. So let's look at our difference between decision making and problem solving. The first bullet under decision making, it says it's often done by one person or a member of senior management who makes it authoritarian. And then problem solving, the first bullet says problems can be solved by a group, team or individual team member. So decision making is we are just trying to come up with what we are doing, a plan of action. So usually that one is taken by one person, because we can't have multiple people trying to make decisions, because then we are going to have problems which will lead us to an issue of problem solving again. Whereas when we are coming to problem solving, we are just saying that there is a problem and we are trying to come up with solution, so different people can suggest solution. The decision as to which solution we are going with, that's going to be now decision making, which is done by one person. So let's move on to the second bullet under decision making. It says various alternatives are considered before deciding on the best one. And then under problem solving, second bullet says alternative solutions are generated, identified and critically evaluated. So you see that under decision making, when we have different alternatives, but choosing the best one is going to be a job of one person or even a voting matter, and when whatever result has passed, that's what we are going with. Whereas in problem solving, we are just more concentrating on generating alternative solutions, just laying them on the table. We are not picking one yet. We are just saying these are the solutions that we can go with, these are the alternative solutions, hence it says solutions that we are considering. Whereas in decision making, it's more concentrated on talking about how do we decide on the best one. That's what decision making. And then the last bullet point under decision making says it is part of problem solving cycle, as decision needs to be taken in each step. And then problem solving, last bullet says process of analyzing situations to identify strategies to bring about change. See that decision making can fall and make part of the problem solving process, because in each step of the problem solving steps, we need to make a decision as to how we are moving on to the next step. So speaking of problem solving steps, the next topic or the next heading under your notes was going to be the problem solving steps. So we have the problem solving steps, the first one being to identify the problem. When you have a problem, we are now talking about problem solving, meaning there is a problem that has occurred in the workplace. For example, maybe the problem is that workers always come to work late. You need to be able to identify specifically what the problem is, and it needs to be explicitly identified and mentioned, and all other possible problems related to it. Like if workers are coming in late, it also means that the shop is opening late, and if the shop is opening late, it means that we are making less money because we start operating late. So those are all the other possible problems that we are encountering, but the problem has to be explicit and identified. If there's multiple problems, they all have to be explicitly outlined. And then the next step, you define the problem. By defining the problem, it means you are elaborating on the problem. You're trying to come up what could be the possible causes, what are also other consequences of this problem that is existing. So them coming late and them opening the shop late means that it's affecting our bottom line, which is our profits. So those are the consequences of the our problem. So in defining the problem, you are stating the causes. Is it a transport issue? Is it a thing of there's nobody who is, there are no clock cards, so there's no way of knowing whether employees came in late or they came in on time? What is the system there? So whatever the cause may be, you stated. Whatever the consequences are, you also state them as well in the step. And then the next step, identify the possible solutions to a problem. Identifying possible solutions to a problem means that we are just putting into the table any other possible solution that we think may help. Maybe we need a work shuttle for our employees. Our employees have work transport that is specifically for them. Do we need to have clock cards that says you clock the time that you came in, and if you were late, it means they're going to deduct those hours from your salary? Whatever possible solution there may be, that's what you may identify to be able to help us with that problem. And then moving on to the fourth step rather, it says select the most appropriate alternative. So this is where now we need to make a decision on of all the possible solutions that were stated in the previous step, which one of this would work best for us, because it's not every solution that would be viable. For example, saying let's provide transport for our employees when we are already running short of money because we are opening late means this is another cost for the business that we may not be able to afford. So maybe the best possible solution here is the solution of clock cards, that holds employees responsible of being on time, because they know that if they are late, they're going to lose that hour on their pay, meaning they're paid an hourly rate if they were not. And then the next step wants you to develop now an action plan. So now that we have decided we are going to implement the clock card system, how are we what is the plan? So here in this step, we are only coming up with a plan. We are drawing a plan that by this date we are going to make sure that we have the clock card machine. And then secondly, we are going to have a meeting with all employees, letting them know that starting from the next month of February, we are going to be using a clock card system. This means that your payment method is going to change to hourly rate instead of a monthly salary. So all of those things, they are an action plan. And then you have to think about where you are going to appease them, because some of them may even have grievances. But you are drawing now an action plan and foreseeing other possible problems that could come with it, and deciding in that plan how you are going to solve those problems ahead. To say that, so what if employees are going to have a grievance with this? Then you come up with a system where you show them that actually the hour paid is going to pay them more than they did before. And then next you implement that step, then the next step you monitor, and then you evaluate the implemented solution. So meaning you put it into place, and then the next step from there is just to see is the solution working or not. If not, you identify a different problem and you start over the steps again. So then to do that, we are looking at problem solving techniques. So we have things that are called problem solving techniques, because once you are in the evaluation step, which is the last step of your problem solving, you may realize that the solution that you came up with did not work. And it may not work not because it's a bad solution, but because you used a wrong technique in trying to solve this problem. So the best way is to familiarize yourself with the different problem solving techniques. We have the Delphi technique, force field analysis, brainstorming, mind mapping, nominal group technique. We have Scamper, forced combination, and an empty chair. So these are our problem solving techniques that you have probably done in previous grades. In grade 12, what's important with these problem solving techniques is for you to study their impact. This is very NB. So in grade 12, we are no longer testing you on what is the Delphi technique. We are testing you on what are the negatives and positive impacts of the Delphi technique. So we already know that the Delphi technique is where a group of experts works together to solve a problem. So we are dealing with experts. So what are the positive impacts of that, and what are the negative impacts of that? That's what you are going to take notes of when you're using the notes in the description box below. So when you download that link, what you're going to do is go to the part of Delphi technique and write down or summarize for yourself, rephrase, paraphrase the negative impact and positive impact of this technique. I recommend that you do 5 each for you to be able to be comfortable, because this is what we are testing in grade 12. We're no longer talking about what is asking you to define force field. It is advisable for you to be able to know that force field analysis is a problem solving method that looks at two opposing forces to solve a problem. But that's not what we are going to ask you in the test. What we are going to ask you in the test is that now that you know that force field is a problem solving method that looks at two opposing forces, what could be the advantages and disadvantages of having to use this method? So you can state things like, if you are using two opposing forces, this may result in things like conflict. So now you have moved from solving a problem with a certain thing to now looking at a conflict, to now looking at a strike. For example, if we go back to our previous example with the shop, if we're looking to opposing forces, it's us, the management, who wants them to come in on time, and them that wants to come in late. That may cause a clash between management and the employees. Similarly, brainstorming technique is where possible solutions to a problem are presented and then deciding on the best one. So possible solutions, that could take forever. That could be one of the disadvantages, because everyone is just throwing in possible solutions, and then another disadvantage could be all the possible solutions being rendered could be things that people don't agree with. But the other positive side to things is that we will have a variety of solutions to choose from. So that's you talking about the impact and of brainstorming. So looking at both, when we say impacts, by the way, we are always asking for both positive and negative, unless the question specifically said give the positive impact or said give the advantages. We look at mind mapping. It's a technique that links different ideas together in a mind map to solve a problem. What could be possible, a possible advantage or a possible positive impact of this method? It could be that it's a visual solution problem technique. You get to see things being placed, whether you're using a board or you're using graphics. It's a visual technique. What could be the negative impact? It may take time. It may take time for you to sit down and come up with pen and paper and try to draw, or even if you're using a computer program to do it, it may still take time when you could just be mentioning the solution and just moving forward with it. Similarly, the nominal group technique is a technique where people in a group anonymously present possible solutions to solve a problem. The problem with anonymous could also be that people now feel brave to ask for things that are unrealistic because they know that nobody is going to know that it's them. People can be harsh, can be rude in their tone as well if they're knowing I'm just writing this thing to go in an anonymous suggestion box. But the positive ones is people can feel free to be honest, knowing that this thing is not going to be held against them because nobody knows that they're the ones who wrote or suggested that solution. Or if the solution backfires, a person is not worried about this is going to make people hate me because they know that this was my solution. Then SCAMPA, we know that SCAMPA stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to other use, eliminate, and reverse. The other, when it comes to this one, is that we saying that SCAMPA basically it provides you with alternatives. It's you saying there was this solution that we came up with, the clock cut system. It didn't really work, but it has some benefits that can still work. So we will combine it with something else, or we'll substitute it with something else, or we will adapt to it, we will modify, we'll put to other use, or we will eliminate it and reverse. But the problem with it on the disadvantage side is that it could take time because something has to sit long enough for us to know that okay, it doesn't really work, so now we have to substitute and then substitute and see how that goes, and then now we have to take a step on combining. So that could be the disadvantage, that it's time consuming. And then we look at forced combination. Forced combination is a technique where symbolism to come up with possible solutions to a problem. So the way forced combination works is, for example, they give you a piece of paper that has a bus on it, and then they're saying using that the item that you're seeing there, come up with a creative solution that relates to the picture that you are seeing. Somebody has a flower, you have a bus, another person has a clock. All of you are going to come up with different solution based on what you are seeing there. So people may not share similar perspectives, so that could be a disadvantage. But also because you have so many different points of view, that could be a positive thing. So it's about finding the positive and the negative within a technique. And then the last one, we have an empty chair, which is a role-playing technique using an empty chair to represent the other party for a different point of view. So the empty chair, the disadvantage can be that it can be biased, because even though you are trying to see different point of views, but it's still role played by one person, so you may force the view to see what you want to see instead of what is true. Whereas on the positive side, if you are honest in and doing it right, you will be able to see another person's point of view without them even being there. So that's what we mean by looking at the positives and negatives. Again, just to reiterate, in grade 12, we are not testing you on defining these techniques. We are testing you on, do you know the advantages and disadvantages of these techniques? So make sure you study those. I cannot reiterate that enough. It's very important. So let's look into the exam questions that will actually show you what I mean, how this question is tested. So we have a case study. It says read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. We have Smooth Furnitures Ltd, abbreviated as SF, which says Smooth Furniture Ltd wanted to change the design of some of their furniture. Employees were requested to suggest new ideas in a large group without working individually. These ideas were used to inspire new thoughts. The management of SF evaluated the advantages and disadvantages of each idea. Question 4.6.1 says, identify 2 problem-solving techniques used by Smooth Furnitures Ltd and quote from the scenario above to support your answer. So what this question wants from me is only to identify the problem-solving techniques, not to define them, just identify them, and then quote a scenario meaning word for word from my scenario, the line that showed me that this is the problem solving technique that is being used. So we are not defining the problem solving technique. I'm saying I have identified a problem solving technique, and this is the evidence of that problem solving technique. So the problem solving techniques that we are going to identify there is, they talked about employees suggesting new ideas, and as well as management evaluating the advantages and disadvantages of each idea. So the first technique is brainstorming, because they're saying employees were requested to suggest new ideas in a large group. So remember, brainstorming is about where people just suggest alternative solutions to a problem. They don't have to pick, they don't have to make a decision, they're just brainstorming. So that line that says employees were requested to suggest, we can call that brainstorming. So anything that has to do with a suggestion box, think brainstorming. And then I have also identified force field analysis. The force field analysis for me is that part where it says management of SF evaluated the advantages and disadvantages of each idea. Remember, the force field analysis on its own, it says you are looking at opposing forces of an idea. So the moment you are saying I have been given an idea and you are looking at its advantages and disadvantages, that means you are looking at two opposing forces of a similar idea. Hence we call that the force field analysis. We are seeing what could possibly work with this solution, but what could also not work with this solution. Then the next question in 4.6.2 says, discuss the advantages of one problem solving technique identified in 4.6.1. So it wanted one of them. So either you're going to discuss the advantages of brainstorming, or you're going to discuss the advantages of force field. So for you, I'm going to provide you with both. Let's start with the advantages of brainstorming, taken directly from the notes that are in the description box. We'll also make sure that you download them. It says better solutions are developed through collective contribution. Remember, because it's the group thing. Secondly, combination of ideas/improvements can be chosen after all ideas have been written down. So even though there's a lot of them that are written down, it means that we don't have to use just one solution. We can do a combination. And then 3, employees are motivated as they are allowed to contribute to problem solving. So employees don't feel like they're being dictated, which usually when employees feel like they're being dictated, they end up resulting to things like strike. So when they know that whatever is being implemented was out of their own suggestions, they don't have any reason to be striking or rebelling to their management. And then second last says, stimulate creative thinking in the workplace, because people have to come up with different ideas and even think outside the box. And then lastly, people get ideas from others and build on them. So it's one of those things that when you may not have a solution, but once you hear somebody's solution, you may think of, how can I take that person's solution and do it better? And that way we end up coming with some of the best solutions ever. My recommendation when you are summarizing these positives and negative impacts is for you again to summarize them, meaning these sentences, if you can find a way to shorten them to where they don't lose their meaning, but it would be in a way that it will be easy for you to remember in the examination room, especially if you're only going to write in March or even going to write in November. That is going to help you a lot. So make sure that when you are summarizing, you are paraphrasing, rephrasing the sentences in your own words, and you are summarizing them. Meaning, if it's a very long sentence that's full of jargon, you are simplifying it and shortening it for you to be able to remember. Remember, my recommendation is always that you have 5 in mind. So we are also going to look at the force field and advantages. They only needed for you to do one in this question, but because I'm doing a solution with you, I'm going to give you both, and whatever is simpler for you is what you will choose to retain. So let's look at the positives or the advantages of a force field analysis. First, it says it provides a visual summary of all various factors supporting and opposing a particular idea. Remember, force field, we are saying I have been given an idea and I'm looking at the idea's advantages and its advantages of that idea. So if I'm saying we are coming up with a solution of a clock cut, what are going to be the positive impacts or the positives of having a clock cut system, but also what is going to be the negative impact on the employees of having a clock cut system. And then the second bullet says employees feel included and understood. It's also good, this one, even if you are not doing it with the employees, but they will still feel included, because it means that you are also not thinking about what's going to benefit the management. You're also going to think about what is going to be the opposing force from the employees themselves. So if I'm thinking about the clock cut system, for me, from the management position, I'm thinking it's gonna get the employees to get to work on time. But what could be the opposing force? How may the employees find a problem with that system? So that means I now have to put them into consideration as I am making a decision. I can't just move forward because it's what's best for the business. I have to also think about what's best for the employees. Then the third one says employees develop and grow with the business because of feeling like they're being included or they're being thought of in the decision making process. Fourth says informed decision can be made as forces for and against are critically evaluated. And then the next one says enables businesses to strengthen driving forces and weaken restraining forces. And the business, lastly, are able to have an idea of a timeline required and the requirements of additional resources. You see there that the rest of those bullet points speak about how the benefit of having or looking critically at my point of view as the business, and also thinking about how the employees may criticize the solution that I'm coming up with. Because when you're thinking it from that perspective, then you think, how am I appeasing myself as well as appeasing the employees all at the same time? And that's what a force field analysis is. Even with clients, it works the same way. So you may think, I want to increase prices, but how is that going to affect my clients? So this shows you the kind of questions you can expect when it comes to this topic. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, make sure you get started with your notes. To have YouTube recommend you more of my videos, be sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below.